Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. My first case. Aurelia location. My office room, 14. 5. 21. So 900 a.m. I was sweating, not due to the heat. I was shivering, not because of the cold. It was all fear, nervousness. I saw myself in the mirror. My chocolatey brown skin glowed. My face seemed like a scared child. A woman in her 30s was standing at my door. Her face was pale, and her eyes were brimming. I felt Jack's presence in my room, so I tried to act normal. He touched my shoulders. Are you sure you can do this? I took a deep breath. Yes, I can. But actually, I wasn't confident. I let the woman inside my room. She said, my husband, Victor, wasn't picking up his phone. I checked his lab, and he was lying over there with blood all around. Please help me. I was noting everything in my diary. I looked up at her face again. So what's your good name? She whispered, Galena. I stared at her. So, ma'am, is your husband alive? Or location? Chem Tech Lab 14. 5. 2021. 09:45 a.m. He was there, lying lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood. We wore our rubber gloves. The lab was such a mess. Whoever did that was clever enough to leave no clue. Our team examined the body and sent it for post-mortem reports. Jack stared at me. I got closer to him. I got this note. He had it clutched in his hands. He patted me. Okay, continue. It wasn't a note. Rather, it was a page from some kid's counting book. There were few numbers circled in it, and most of the words he had written on the page were either blotted due to sweat or soaked in blood. There was something scribbled, and next to it was written in a terrible handwriting, "Feel." That did ring a bell. Jack peeped into the paper. What is it? I replied, I guess it is feel, an archaic word for faithful, or maybe Fe is iron, Al is aluminum. Galena interrupted. No, it's Felix Allen. I got curious. Who's that? She glared outside the window. He's Victor's best friend, colleague, 10 years younger to him. Below that, there was blood, and the only thing I could read in between, that was Nikum. And Veer, Jack asked. Aura, what is Nikum? I took my eyes off the paper. Probably it's a surname. One of my classmates had it. I moved to the surveillance room. Galena followed me. This room is incomplete. There's nothing to check here, lady. Victor hasn't installed the cameras yet. After sealing the area, we met the watchman. Sir, you were supposed to be on duty last night. He nodded his head. Yes, ma'am. I walked closer to him. So what seemed unusual last night? He replied, Nothing of that sort, ma'am. As usual, Victor, Sir, and Felix had a terrible fight. And yes, he was the only one who came here last night. He tried to avoid eye contact with me. Galena came up. Victor and Felix fighting with each other doesn't surprise me. And she went away. Location: my office room, 14/5/2021, 3:00 p.m. I slowly asked, Jack, how was I doing yesterday? He chuckled. Like how beginners do. The post-mortem report arrived. Jack glanced at me. Aura, what does the report say? I responded, Nothing unusual. Cause of death is hemorrhage. Time of death is 02:47 a.m. He sat beside me. What did you derive from the bizarre note? I took a sip of my coffee. I've given the note to Elena to find out the order of numbers he circled. Through the past ink detector, Elena entered the room with her usual radiant smile. Here you go, Aura. I and Jack peeped into it. The numbers he circled were 66, 57, 7, 8, 74, 68. I made funky faces. What is this? Probably this guy went nuts before he died. Jack stared at me. The only one who's going nuts is you. Listen, beginner. See, there are 10 digits. Probably this is a phone number. Unable to control my curiosity, I dialed the number to check. It said, This is Felix. I'm busy. Leave a voice message. I felt so embarrassed, even though it was my first case. Location: Felix's house, 15/5/2021, 8 a.m. I knocked at the door. I was nervous, excited, and don't know what else. The door opened. A man, probably in his 50s, stood there. He wore short floral trousers and a white, crumpled shirt. May I know who's this? I beamed. I'm Aura. Aurelia. Don't you remember me, Uncle? I'm Felix's college friend. He smiled back. Yes, I do. Look, girl, you've grown up. I chuckled. Felix was in his room. And what surprised me was the room consisted of both Akara Nikom and Dylan Ower. I felt like it was turning from an investigation to a reunion party. Felix was too in shock. A positive shock. He hugged me. Oh my God, this day is too good. A few minutes ago, I was telling these guys how upset I am for you weren't here, and he asked me to take a seat. I'll get you something to eat. By the way, Dylan and Akara got married. You know, they're working with us. I reminded myself I had some work over there. I went inside Felix's kitchen. Phil, would you mind if I stay here with you tonight? I need to talk something in private. He beamed. Yeah, sure. He got too excited. Back in his room, I looked all around. Akara said, So how's life going for you? I chuckled. Oh, it's crazy. What about you guys? What are you guys working on? Akara replied, This project is supposed to be confidential. I joined this group just last week, as soon as I got married to Dylan. He is the one who introduced this to me. I owe him a lot. Dylan chuckled. Don't mention it, girl. Everybody in the room had wide smiles. Location: Felix's house. 15/5/2021. 10:00 a.m. The day was almost over. Dylan and Akara had left. I felt butterflies in my stomach. Felix was so happy. I was afraid what I had in stock for him would blow away his sunshine like a smile. But on the other hand, what if he turns out to be a venomous snake? What if he was the culprit? All such thoughts were passing in my mind. He sat close to me. Hey, I too have a lot to talk with you. Where should we start from? I frowned. Why are you whispering? He looked embarrassed. I don't know. And he pulled himself a little bit farther from me. We stared at each other for a second, and then he started. You used to say you wanted to become a detective. Did that happen? I sighed. Coming to that point, I am a detective now, and I'm extremely sorry to tell you that Hector is dead. He chuckled. Come on. Your pranks are seriously outdated. I was gonna say that you've changed, but you're still the same. I showed him my ID. Phil, I'm serious. Your friend died day before yesterday. Tears started to drip from his eyes. Are you serious? I nodded my head. A minute later, I asked him, how frequently did you and Victor fight? He softly said, I need a break. And he went off to the balcony and wandered. He came back. I repeated the question. He sighed. Every time we met, we used to fight a bit. Sometimes for fun, and the other times seriously. But the last time wasn't my fault. He was the one who slashed his knife at me. He pulled his shirt to show his blood-stained bandage on his stomach. When I started bleeding, I left the room shouting at him. I stared at him. So, you mean to say you did nothing when he slashed the knife at you? He went on weeping. I had stopped talking to him for a week. And then that day, I went to sort out our issue. And he did this to me. I bit my lips. The watchman heard you guys fighting. He said you were the only one who met him last night. His eyes reflected fear. I don't remember seeing any watchmen over there. He shoved his head into his hands and went on weeping. He slowly rubbed his right hand on his old cut mark on his left wrist. I asked him, I know it hurts a lot, but what was the fight about? He was still rubbing the cut. I don't know. He was hiding something about the project, and I almost did everything in the project, but he never paid me on time. Or maybe he never paid me. I was struck in a terrible financial situation. He went on weeping. I thought maybe this played as a motive to kill him. Location: Chemtech Lab, 16/5/2021, 09:30 a.m. Back at the lab, I met the watchman. Hey, good morning. What else do you know about Felix's and Victor's fight? He waited for a second and said, well, you know, lady, they fight for the silliest thing in the world to the most serious thing in the world. Felix would frequently threaten to quit the project if he wasn't paid. He never understood that Victor was too in a financial issue. He wasn't able to pay his daughter's fees. I asked, anything else? He thought for a moment again and said, few days before they fought, Felix stole the money Victor had for paying Irina's fees. He said it was an emergency. Victor was very upset because they suspended his daughter from school for a month. I nodded my head. So was the fight verbal or physical? He didn't waste a second. Physical? Galina gave me the key to the lab. Hello? I asked her. If you don't mind, shall I ask you something? She nodded her head. I started. What kind of relationship did Felix and Victor have? She shifted her hair, falling on her face. Victor used to treat him like his own brother, but suddenly things started to fall apart. I then asked her, what about Dylan and Akara? Galina replied, they're cool. They've joined recently. Victor told that if the project was compatible with these guys, then he would no longer need Felix. I roamed around the lab and started feeling thirsty. So I walked myself to a nearby shop, leaving Jack in the lab. I asked for juice. He passed it to me. So, ma'am, are you the one investigating Viktor Antonov's murder case? I nodded my head. Yes, I am the one. He came near to me. Don't trust the watchman over there, I whispered. Why? He said, Madam, that fool is a booze head. He drinks every night and goes to the backyard of the lab and lies down there. I was like, okay. What? I quietly came back and whispered into Jack's ears. Now I was very confused about what to trust and what not to. I checked the lab for more clues. Galina asked us to join her for lunch. Location: Victor's home, 16/5/2021, 11:30 a.m. As Galina was preparing lunch, I roamed around the house. I met his 14-year-old Irina over there. She was in her room, sad. I went to her. Hey, do you want to paint? She said, no. I knew what she was going through. I sat beside her. I know it's hard. She turned towards me. I was thrown out of the school. Gradually, Felix stopped taking my tuitions, and now Dad is gone. She wept. I told her, we'll find out who did that to your dad, and we'll put him in jail. I asked her, what kind of tutor was Felix? She blushed. Who? Felix? He was great. He used to take my math tuitions. I don't know. The last few days when he took my tuitions, his eyes were red, and he was pretty distracted. And in the middle of nowhere, my dad pulled him to his room and smacked him badly. I never knew why. Galena came to the room, pulling Irina, and whispered, "Don't talk about that idiot in our home." There was a strong motive for Felix to murder Victor. He faced a series of depression during his college day, and when he came out of that, he came out violent. I found an unposted letter over there. It was from Victor to Felix. I tried to read it, but due to Galena's presence, I put it into my pocket. Location: Felix's house, 16/5/2021, 3:45 p.m. His father asked me to wait in Felix's room while he had gone somewhere out. I found another letter in his home. This was probably 2 months old. I took both of the letters and read them. It was written in 50% English and 50% Russian. The Russian part was written in English fonts. There was nothing new, while the whole letter said that he was sorry for what he did. There was nothing he could do to help Felix. But the last 2 lines struck me. It said, "Never nikom, mene ochen zal." Don't trust anyone. I'm really sorry. I tried to match it with the note clutched in his hand. It was never Akra Nikon or Dylan Ower, with only half of the spelling visible. But I felt, if he had mentioned it in this note, too, did that mean Victor was gonna take revenge for his murder with that note? But that would be really melodramatic to write sorry, and all while you die. I looked at the letter even closely for clues. That's when I found out. The scribbling before feel meant ask, ask, feel. I smiled. I said to myself, Ora, he probably wanted the finder of his body to ask Felix about something, or maybe he wanted us to question him. I could hear Felix's voice and footsteps. I put the letters in my right pocket and the note in my left pocket. I already had a note, too, where I had arranged those numbers in order. He was still in the same condition. He smiled, but not from his heart. I tried not to waste time. Feel? What are your comments on this note? He slightly glanced at it. That's my phone number, but the commas are crazy. In between them, I sighed. What would it mean with the commas? Suppose you find this number somewhere not related to you. He pulled that note from me and stared at it. He constantly mumbled to himself. After 5 minutes, he said, if I went by the element's atomic number, 66, 57, 7, 8, 74, 68, would mean dysprosium, lanthanum, nitrogen, oxygen, tungsten and erbium. I stared at him. And if we go by its symbols, then Di-La-N-O-W-R. His eyes were filled with horror. Jack called me. Hey, Ora, Achara is murdered. She just died a few minutes ago in my arms and told me. I interrupted. I know the rest. Just come to Felix's house and give him protection. I'll catch him. We'll find out the why after that murder. Hi, Miranda. I'm officially Officer Zionel, but you can call me Zoe. I just want to ask you a few questions about the recent situation. Zoe, don't say recent situation. It's stupid when we all know that what you mean is murder of your father. You're a feisty kid, Miranda. Thanks. I take it as a compliment. Now that we got that out of the way, do you remember exactly where you were at exactly 6:53 p.m. on July 17th? Gosh, I don't remember. It seems that all of my memories have been wiped from my head. Miranda! Okay. I won't be a brat. But you said yourself that I'm feisty, Zoe. I didn't mean it as a compliment, like you took it. Whoa, ho, ho. She's got an attitude, too. I think we'll get along. So, what's the real answer to my question? I was at the bowling alley with my twin Maya and our best friends Sarah and Diavian. We were about to eat pizza before the next game. It was a tournament. When Gima called and said Dad was shot. Long story short, me and Maya left before we could finish the tournament, and our friends lost. That's what Maya said. But who's Gma? Maya mentioned a grandma, but not a Gma. Oh, right. Maya calls our grandma, but I call her Gma. That's what I called her when I was little, and I couldn't say grandma, and it stuck. All right. How did your grandmother know that your father was hit? She went over to our house to drop off some books that I had left at her house. And that's when she found him. Dead as a doornail, right there on the kitchen floor. You and Maya's stories are matching up, but Maya seemed a lot more emotional about this than you do. She was practically sobbing as she talked to me. Why are you so cool and collected? Zoe, do you seriously not realize that Dad is not Maya and I real Dad? That one left us before we were born. Don't have a clue where he's at. When Mama married Rob, Maya warmed up to him immediately. I was not so cooperative. I've never been close to him. Yeah, he's always been there for me, but he never, and will never, now, become a father to me. When I first found out about it all, I was a little upset. But it only took me a day to be over it. Maya, like you said, is still a wreck. Oh, I understand now. So, the first person your grandmother called was you. Not Maya, or your uncle, or any of your aunts. Not even your mother? Yeah. Now remember that this was Mama's mama. She didn't want to hurt Mama right away. Maya would be too sensitive too, and she didn't have any of Rob's siblings' numbers. So, the first one she called was me. Simple as that. Maya told me that your grandmother called you first because she thought you were closest to Rob. You're a bad liar, Zoe. I know my sister like I know my own mind. She and everyone else in our family already knows that I'm not the closest person to Rob. So what did she say? You know, you should be a detective. I did my best lying, and you still got me. That could come handy in a lot of situations if you become a part of the force. Yeah, whatever. What did Maya say? Same thing as you, Miranda. Okay. So, now what? Can I leave? Please. I need to talk to Maya. She's probably hysterical by now. No, you can't. I'm sorry. There are still a few more questions that I have to ask you. Where was your mother when Rob was so awfully killed? She was at work, at the hospital. They were short-staffed. Okay, this may be a dumb question, but do you know where your aunts and uncle were? Yeah, they were all getting together for a dinner at Olive Garden. Rob was going to go with them. I'm guessing that he must have been on his way out when he was shot. Do you know of anyone who had a grudge against Rob? Miranda, who is it? Miranda, was it you? Why, Miranda? Miranda! I hated him. He abused me. He slapped me, punched me, kicked me. He verbally abused me too. He never did it to anyone else. Your sister knows. She's covering up for you. Yes? Was it self-defense? Or did you do it because you were so sick of it all? Self-defense. Despite all of these lies, I promise you that it was just self-defense. He was trying to hurt me again. He was screaming at me. I went into his room and got into the gun safe. I pulled the gun out. I hid it behind my back while I walked downstairs. In the kitchen, he started to slap me and punch me in the gut and face. After a few minutes, I just shocked. I couldn't stop it. It is possible for us to prove that, so you wouldn't be put in juvie. For now, though, you'll have to stay here at the station. I'm sorry, Miranda. I can tell you're telling the truth, but I can't release you until we can prove that. Now that you've admitted that, I understand. All right, come with me. We're going to go talk to Maya. Miranda! Oh, God. You told her, didn't you? Yes, I did, Maya. I'm sorry. It's okay. I still love you. I love you too. All right, girls. Maya, will you tell me the truth of what you know? Of what actually happened? That's the thing. I don't know anything. All I know is what Miranda told me. She shot Rob because he was trying to hurt her again. Then she came to the bowling alley to play in a tournament. That part of our story was true. Okay. I'm going to call your mother to pick you up, Maya. Miranda, you stay with her until I come back. Okay, all right. Muddled murder. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the blood. My mind went into a full panic mode, and I flipped out. I started checking all over myself to see where I had been injured, my bloody hands smearing the blood all over my clothes. Then I realized I wasn't injured, which could only mean one thing. It was someone else's. Blood, but whose? I had no idea. In fact, I had no idea where I was. All I could see around me was a dark, narrow street. I was standing on the sidewalk, quite far away from the nearest streetlight. Above me was the clear night sky. A handful of stars shone down upon me, and I felt that they were supposed to give me some comfort, but my heart rate refused to slow down. And then I saw it. There was a body on the curb, barely 10 meters away from me. My natural instinct was to go and check on the person, but something stopped me. I wondered what, but my memory refused to provide me with anything in my past. I tiptoed closer, not another soul in the alley, as I went and checked. I was still a couple of meters away from the man when I realized he wasn't breathing. There was a pool of blood spreading from his torso and onto the sidewalk. The man was dead, and I had blood on my hands. I didn't need any memory to add up the two. A car's headlights suddenly flashed to life in front of me, and the engine revved on. It reversed a bit, and then sped past me, barely giving me enough time to register the man sitting inside. From the small pharmacy in front of me, a short, bearded man came out and started pulling down the shutter. I did the first thing that came to my mind. I ran. I had no idea how long I had run for, but I am sure it was a pretty long time because my t-shirt was completely soaked in sweat by the time I stopped. And it was an early winter evening. I realized I was on a bridge, a few cars going by, couples walking, holding hands, families with little children. I wondered who my parents were, if I was married or had a romantic lover. If I only had my memories back, my life. But the sight of my hand snapped me right out of those thoughts. It didn't matter, because nobody would want to be related to a murderer. I didn't know if someone else had killed him, or if it had been me. But suddenly, it occurred to me that it would be better if I didn't know. If I did remember my past, what if I realized that I had murdered him? Not only him, but maybe others too. Just that thought made me doubt myself, and wanting my memories back seemed like a dangerous option. I descended the bridge to reach the turbid river flowing past me, and thankfully washed up my bright red hands in the water. My hands were numb by the time I stood up to return to the upper roads. That was when I heard something. "Oh, it was easy as cake," a man said. "Are you sure no one was there?" asked a woman. "I think I saw a girl, and she saw me." I panicked and drove forward, but the car hit her head, and she collapsed to the ground. I didn't know what to do, and I stopped to check, but she was stirring up, so I raced away, the man replied. It was coming from the other side of the bridge, beyond the wall separating the riverbank for the construction of the bridge. I tiptoed over to it, and peeked out to see who was talking. Smoke blew out from a man's dark lips as he put a cigarette into his mouth again, leaning on the wall. The woman was standing across from him, arms crossed, in oversized, baggy clothes. She had a beanie on her head and wore huge, funky glasses. She was facing me, but I was well hidden in the dark. They continued talking, not caring to keep their voices down. "You dolt? The body is still there?" the woman asked. "Abandoned on the sidewalk. Shouldn't be noticed by anyone till tomorrow morning. By then, we'll be long gone." The man was nonchalant. The woman nodded, a bit anxious, while he smoked for a minute more. Then they both started climbing up the riverbank. I followed them after some time, composing my thoughts and struggling to remember something. I thought I must have waited for a minute or two, but I somehow still saw the car leaving with the two people in it, and the slate of my memory, which had been wiped clean, managed to store the number in it. Police sirens made their way to my ears, and I was a bit surprised. My blank mind recognized it. Had I heard them many times before? Was I actually a criminal? What was my past? I somehow didn't want to find out. I just stood frozen there, above the riverbank, in the headlights of the police cars, as they advanced towards me. I was literally unable to move, dead tired and fatigued. "Hands up in the air," came a voice over the loudspeaker. My addled mind did as I was told. The next few minutes were a blur as the cops came out, handcuffed me, charged me for the murder of a famous entrepreneur, and took me to the police station for questioning. Somewhere along the way, I fell unconscious. "Did you kill Mr. Pop?" I knew that was the name the entrepreneur was known by, but it sounded funny. I bit back a chuckle. "I don't know," I answered, just like I had the 3 last times. "I have all night," the officer told me. "Keep sitting then. I hope your butt doesn't hurt." I almost smirked. He glared daggers at me, and then stood up and left the room. A few minutes later, another officer entered, a plump, middle-aged woman. "Answer honestly. Did you kill Mr. Pop?" "I have been telling you honestly. I have no idea whether I did or I didn't. I just woke up with no memory of where I was or who I was." I yelled at her, yelled. She nodded in sympathy. Quite common in criminals. I was too tired to correct her, but I was exasperated. Why couldn't they just understand I was telling the truth? Nothing in my head tells me that I killed that man, so I don't know, I declared. "There is quite some evidence, you know. The blood on your clothes matches with his." I looked down at the red spots and smears on my clothes and winced. And a shop owner in the alley says that he saw a girl with a description like yours run away from the dead body. Same orange t-shirt, same long braid, and same camo pants. Now tell me, what am I supposed to believe? She raised an eyebrow. I really don't know, I said. The description was me all right, and I had run away. But had I killed the man? Unsure guilt surged through my veins, and the officer noticed the beads of sweat on my forehead. If I was the murderer, I was just making their jobs harder. But then, I didn't want to find out. Unsure guilt was stressful enough, and I didn't know how I could live with the knowledge that I had killed a human being in cold blood. Are you sure you don't want to confess anything? She asked with a tone of finality in her sweet voice. I would confess if I remembered anything, I replied. Then I suddenly remembered something. Wait, what's wrong? The lady officer leaned forward, eyebrows knitted together. I saw that car leave the bridge tonight. The two people in it, they were talking about something suspicious, I said, racking my brain for the words. The man raised an eyebrow. What? I'm not sure. They were saying that they left a body on the sidewalk. A girl had seen it. They hit her head and run away. They were planning to escape tonight. I narrated the incident. How does that make a difference? It does, I said, as I saw my spark of hope being snatched away with it. You should check. I remember the car number. You know the number plate, huh? The two police officers had tracked the number plate to a road by the river, where a car had been abandoned. Go home, the woman told me. I don't know where I live. Then wait here. We're going alone. I scowled as I followed them out of the police station, and their car revved away. Then I saw a cab passing me and jumped in. Follow that car! We followed the car for 25 minutes until we reached a road running parallel to the river. The police car had stopped behind the car I had seen before, and I told the cab driver to park behind it and jumped off. I rushed to the shore where I could see the river and a small boathouse in the distance. The river was wide at that point, the current slow. To my left were the mountains into which the river bent, and my right were the police officers near the boathouse about half a kilometer away. I saw the man and woman I had seen earlier, along with a dark guy in shoes, pull out a rusty old motorboat and push it into the water and jump on. Put your hands in the air. You cannot escape tonight. The officers pointed their gun at them. In their surprise, someone suddenly activated the turbines, and they sped ahead into the river, moving towards my side. The motorboat was slow. The turbines were sputtering and malfunctioning as the boat raced away, forearm the routing and chasing officers. I don't know what I was thinking, but I barely hesitated a second before jumping into the river to my left. They were speeding towards my side, cutting through the middle of the river. I was perpendicularly closer, and I knew I could reach the center before they did. I swam in smooth, rapid strokes, cutting through the water like a literal fish as I aimed towards the center where they would reach in about 10 seconds. I think they were too preoccupied, keeping their eyes on the officers, because they certainly didn't see me coming. The cold water didn't faze me. It was like it was part of my blood. Of course, the adrenaline counteracted it, and I had no trouble speeding through the limpid surface. As expected, I reached 1 second before their boat. As it zoomed past me, I somehow managed to grab hold of the end. I clambered on, somehow still unnoticed by the 3 people, while the officers stared at me, flabbergasted. They were too scared to shoot, let it hurt me, so it all depended on me. I crept forward and elbowed the cigarette man in the neck sharply, that he fell to the ground immediately, somehow unconscious. The woman turned to me, ready to battle in her large hanging clothes. I ducked to avoid her punch, grabbed her arm, and twisted it behind her back. Then I kicked her off the boat as it continued speeding away. The last man was the one with the shades, driving the boat. He stepped out of the seat while the boat continued towards the hills and turned to face me. Even though I couldn't see his eyes, a chill ran down my spine, and he attacked. I think my brain was a little slow to process as his kick swept me off my feet and knocked the air out of my lungs. Panting, I pushed at the floor to get up, while he grabbed my hair and pushed my head towards the whirring motors of the boat. He pressurized me into the blades, while I used all my physical strength to hold my head up. He pushed once, twice, and the 3rd time, I finally got a grip with one hand to ram the other into his sternum. As he doubled back, I realized that the boat was heading straight for a wall of soil and bushes. A hill was straight ahead. I rushed towards the wheel, but before I could rush it, the man got up and tugged me back. I wrestled with him, watching the imminent crash drifting closer. He kicked my thigh, and I launched a punch at his shoulder, ran again for the wheel. Grabbing the cool metal, I yanked it to the right, just as the boat curved around the edge of the hill, and barely avoided the collision. The man with shades had managed to stand up at the end of the boat, but my sudden turn threw him off balance, and he splashed into the water. I steered the boat towards the shore as I saw the other 2 criminals climbing out and being ambushed by the police officers. I finally parked along the bank and stepped out, my mind in a whirl, even more muddled than before. The 2 officers emerged, dragging along the 2 criminals. The woman went onto the boat and brought the 3rd guy, then came back, and both of them patted my back. But I wasn't paying attention. My mind was elsewhere. How did I know how to do all that? How did I swim so well, or fight so brutally? The worst thought crept into my head. I could be a trained assassin or mercenary. I was too much of an expert, and I had been pretty close to the dead man. I was scared that I had led the police on a wild goose chase. I must be the real criminal. I must have killed Mr. Pop. I didn't want to find out. When I voiced my concerns, the police officers waved them away, too busy congratulating me. But my head refused to believe them, fearful of what my past could hold. Hey, do you remember me? A man rushed into the hospital ward, worry lines creasing over his forehead. Two people who claimed to be my parents were standing on one side of my bed, explaining to me that he was my brother. I'm sorry, but no, I said, and he looked like he was about to burst into tears. My parents leaned over and hugged him as they also squeezed my hands. I saw the two police officers appear from the door. They had huge grins on their faces. All three of them confessed to the murder, and we also found them guilty of a couple more. They have been duly imprisoned. Great work, kid, the man said. And on top of that, it was announced a couple of hours ago that you are going to be awarded a bravery medal for your courage. The woman was about to jump up and down. I found it difficult to smile. But how was I able to defeat them so easily? How could I fight so well, swim so smoothly? Are you sure I'm not a danger to society? My brow was furrowed. No. Not at all. The man who was supposed to be my father guffawed and slapped my thigh. Don't worry. I'll tell you a bit about yourself. You are 26, won 7 medals for swimming in high school, and now teach martial arts at a renowned academy. Revenge is best served from the dead. My name is Danny Donahue, and I am not your ordinary 14-year-old boy from Southern California. Well, I guess I may be ordinary, except for one teeny thing, but I guess that normal. Nobody is just ordinary. Heck, what does ordinary even mean? I guess I will never know. Because I am not your ordinary boy. I am Danny Donahue, the boy who helps ghosts cross into their next life. Movies weren't wrong. There are ghosts on Earth, and sometimes they might get stuck on Earth because they have unfinished business with someone or themselves. Ugh. They can't even get peace after they die. I thought, when we die, we are finally at peace. I guess, sadly not. Most of the time, it's something simple, like apologizing to someone, or something similar to that. But other times, it was hard. It wasn't because a task was too hard or complicated. No, it was because the ghosts themselves didn't even know what they had left to do. And that is something frustrating. I know what you may be thinking. What do his parents think? Probably think he belongs in the lunny bin. If you thought that, you thought wrong. His parents, Estelle and Banrable Donahue, possessed the same abilities their son had. But this story is my weirdest adventure yet. I still wonder if it actually even happened. It's kind of crazy, and Danny doesn't want to brag or anything, but but he was quite awesome, if he had to say. This story started when my family and I had moved from Southern California to New York City. We only had moved here because this was the city populated with wandering souls, which just meant more stress on me. My social life was non-existent. My parents had homeschooled me since 2nd grade, when I began helping them out. But this unbelievable, well, me saying ghosts are real is already quite unbelievable, story started when I moved into my family's new apartment in the busy part of New York. When my parents weren't super cool ghost helpers, they were journalists. And might I add, mighty fine when they did their work. But that meant they barely had time to spend with me. I had opened the bright red door to the quite large apartment, opening my arms and breathing the new place in. I was quite excited to be living here. I never had been to New York before, and it seemed magical. When I had walked into my plain, empty room, I spotted a ghost. Great, can't even sleep one night without someone barging in. Danny grumbled to himself. I didn't think the ghost boy saw me. Who wouldn't? I am pretty handsome, Danny thought, running a hand through his thick black hair. I don't think the dead boy had seen me, and if he hadn't acknowledged me yet. Then the ghost boy had walked over to me from fiddling the sustains and slammed the door behind me. I just realized that the ghost thought I couldn't see him. After I realized that I went over to the formerly alive boy and said, "Hi." Never thought I would have spooked a ghost, but I guess I did, because it looked like the ghost seemed startled. You can see me. The tall ghost pointed up and down to himself, unsure. Since I'm talking to you, I'm pretty sure I can, I said, as it was obvious. Sorry, I'm really dead. The best scenario would be that I was dreaming, but am not, right? The ghost mumbled on. No, you are sadly dead, and I'm alive, and I can see you, but other people can't. Well, most people can't. By the way, my name is Danny, he stated while putting down boxes of his random junk on the floor. Well, nice to meet you, Danny. My name is Nicholas. The ghost, Nicholas, smiled at him. Danny, come here. We need your help. Danny's dad hollered from outside the apartment. I was sure the whole floor could hear him. Sure thing. Wait, hold on. You and your parents are going to be living here? Nicholas questioned. And can they see me? Or are you like some chosen one thing? Yes, and yes. My parents can see ghosts too. And our job is to help you move on, Danny said, opening the door and walking over to help his parents. But Nicholas had stayed in the same spot, not wanting to talk to Danny's parents. After all, he hadn't had any interaction with a living or a dead person in 2 years. He had gotten used to staying in the shadows and just listening to other people talk, I had come back with another enormous and heavy box and dropped it on the floor, making a loud whump sound. "So, Nicholas," Danny said, testing his name on how it felt in his mouth. "Why are you still here?" "I don't know." Nicholas shrugged. "Then think of something stopping you from resting in peace." Then I walked back out of my room to grab more boxes. I had told my parents I had to set up my room and didn't want them to see it. Only after I finished, so I would have an excuse to stay in my room. And plus, Nicholas didn't want to see my parents for some reason. Nicholas and I talked in hush whispers for hours that day, but he still couldn't think of any reason why he would still be a ghost. But a ghost, technically, is a person who is only partially dead. But he could think of anything. I had, though, learned that Nicholas was 47, but he had died 2 years ago in a drowning accident. I had urged him to tell me the reason for how he drowned, but he didn't say. Until an hour of my excellent persuasion, he told me that he couldn't swim and died before anyone got to him. I always knew I had good convincing skills. A couple of days passed, and still nothing. Danny just wanted to bring Nicholas to his parents, but Nicholas always refused. Ugh, if I went up to him, they would have probably figured out the reason for his reason to stay with the living. "Okay, Danny, I think I might know why I am not really dead yet," Nicholas huffed out. He seemed slightly embarrassed, but more so angry. "Finally! Been waiting for this for a while," Danny said, stretching back on his chair, taking a break from an easy he had to complete by 2 hours. "Okay, so I lied. I didn't die by drowning, just to let you know I can swim. But I was drowned by my kids exactly 2 years ago. And I think the forgive and forget part hasn't exactly worked. And I think I might want revenge on those brats," Nicholas said in a hushed voice, not sure if he really trusted Danny. But if Danny said that he could help him, he might finally get avenged for his death. My eyes literally felt like they might come out of my eye sockets. "Hold on, buddy. Just what?" Danny said, shock clearly visible on his face. The ghost I always helped had simple tasks, and maybe once in a blue moon, it might be a little interesting. But this was just out of this world crazy. No more like out of the universe. So basically, you're telling me that you were some rich dude with spoiled brats for kids, and then when you were about to die, you decided to change your will so that your sister gets most of it? Danny asked, still thinking this was a really small reason to kill your dad, even if he was a billionaire and didn't even give you 1% of it. Yes, but you see, before I could change the will, they somehow found out about me changing it, so they killed me, so they would get over 80% of my money and estate. What happened to your wife? Danny wondered. She died a year before me, Nicholas said, with a sad smile, probably remembering his wife. So what do you want to do? I'm assuming you want payback, Danny said, raising an eyebrow. Yes, and I have been planning it for 2 years, so it's basically foolproof, Nicholas said with a smile. Family drama. Danny chuckled a little while thinking this. Then, that day, Nicholas told me what he had in mind, and I am not going to lie. It was quite clever. I guess when you have 2 years to think of a plan, and not any plan. A plan to get revenge on your killers. You would want to perfect it. Nicholas had been living in Danny's room for almost a year, and since Nicholas started living in this apartment, he always scared future tenants. Except for the Donahues, because they could see him. The strange thing was my parents still hadn't spotted Nicholas yet. Strange indeed. Nicholas had been living in this apartment specifically because it was right next to, you would never guess who, his kids' apartments. Every time he saw them, he felt sadness for what he let them become. But then the sadness turned into anger, and his blood started boiling whenever he looked at them for what he did to him. The next day, we started putting Nicholas's plan into action. But for one part of it, I had to borrow something from my parents without raising suspicion. I had to borrow a special drink that if a ghost drank it, they would be invisible, but be able to touch not too heavy stuff. I thought talking the elixir would be difficult, but it proved to be easy since my mom was out meeting some new friends she had made, and my dad had gone grocery shopping. So I took the elixir with ease. After he got it, he gave it to Nicholas, and Nicholas slurped the dark bluish liquid down with one gulp. Slow down, Nicky. You don't want to get a stomach ache, Danny teased. First off, don't call me Nicky, and second, I am too excited. Nicholas seemed exhilarated. After the Donahues' concoction started settling in Nicholas's body, they tested it out to see if it really worked. They even tried the classical ghost picking up book thing, and behold, it worked. Almost as if Nicholas were alive. After that, Nicholas was extremely giddy and excited to get his plan in motion. After what seemed like half an hour, I finally thought we had enough of the playing, and now we had to get the work done. Nicholas had passed through and walked into his daughter, Stella's apartment. It had the same layout of which the Donahues' flat was, but theirs was more on the old side, whereas Stella's place was more modern and high-tech. Danny just had Nicholas go into the apartment and find the key to the front door and slide it over to Danny. Yes, the floor cracks were quite large. Don't worry, she comes back in an hour. So that gives us an hour to play golf, Nicholas said with a smirk, grabbing a baseball bat and ruining all the expensive furniture and decor in the house. I don't mind. I think that this should be all yours. You deserve this, Danny said with a dramatic bow, pretending Nicholas was royalty. He practically was. He was a billionaire. "Why, thank you," Nicholas said with amusement, after an hour of playing golf. They had successfully destroyed everything. Then the door opened, and you could hear screaming. But in my opinion, it sounded like a cat being hit by a car. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Not that painting! Not that painting! That cost too much to end up like this," said Stella, running around, looking through her apartment. Nicola watched with enjoyment as his daughter was running around checking her possessions that she had bought with his money. After all, it was his money, so it was his stuff too. "Hello, Stella. I hoped you learned a lesson about why you shouldn't kill people, especially not family." Nicholas boomed from standing beside the TV, and then she shattered the expensive screen. "What are you doing? Who are you? I'm calling with the cops. Get out of my place," Stella yelled back, visibly frightened, trying to sink into a wall and grabbing a hold of a knife. "My dear, you don't need to do that. I got a deal to make." Nicholas clearly enjoyed this. I mean, Stella is a murder, so this should be okay. "What do you want?" Stella stuttered, but tried keeping her head high. "I want you to donate all the money you got from your father's will." "Why is this your concern?" Stella sneered back, still nervous. "Don't you cut me off again," Nicholas shouted. "The second thing you must do, or I will follow you and haunt you, even in your sleep. So don't you dare disobey me. The second thing you must do is that you and your brother, Jeremy, will have to go to the police station and tell them you committed the murder of Nicholas DeRosa. Understood me?" Nicholas seethed out. Stella just grunted and walked out the door, slamming it shut before she left her apartment. Then, Nicholas walked out of the bathroom, where I was hiding behind a shower. I know it's not the best place, but still, you did good, Nicholas. Danny smiled at him, and Nicholas beamed out a smile so bright it would make the sun look like a little flame compared to Nicholas. Nicholas and Danny did the same stuff to Nicholas's son, Jeremy DeRosa. Nicholas and Danny had to repeat this routine for 2 weeks before Jeremy donated his part of the will and went to hand himself in to the police, which meant Stella only had little time left before Jeremy told the police what happened. After a week more of Nicholas's and Danny's torture, Stella couldn't take it anymore. She went to donate her money and hand herself in with a miserable face. She only handed herself in because Nicholas had haunted her so bad that she couldn't even close her eyes to sleep. And she looked and acted like a zombie. After 8 months, I guess that's it, Danny said to Nicholas, who was about to go to the life after death. I guess it is, little buddy. Thanks again. I never thought Jeremy and Stella would be put into prison, but I guess they get their karma. Nicholas thanked Danny. Jeremy and Stella had a trial. And this time, Nichols made sure they didn't just pay the money and not get charged with anything. After 8 months of watching court fights happen, both of the DeRosa kids, well, they aren't really kids, got sent to prison. Goodbye, Danny. Thank you so much. Hope you have a happy ending to your life, Nichols said as he vanished away into thin air, into the afterlife. You may think the story ends here, but you're very wrong. The DeRosa kids had mysteriously died in prison, and they realized that Danny was helping their father scare them. So now the DeRosa kids were after me. And I am now basically a runaway. That I am even on national television. So proud of myself. Stella and Jeremy are coming to kill me for messing up their lives. And I am so going to end up dead meat. Victim of drug lords. He clutched onto his mother's arm tightly and staggered out the sliding panels. His mother seemed to be sighing and kept casting her amber eyes downward, as if embarrassed. Jason, I'm telling you that it happened. Don't be daft, mother. Of course, it didn't, he said, with a short, almost nervous chuckle. He stole a sideways glance at his mom, only to be met with lowered eyes. Jason's dirty blonde hair whipped around his ears in the wind. It hadn't been cut in a while, and he desperately needed one. Jason, I need you to remember what happened the night you were admitted, his mother said hurriedly. They had almost reached the sleek black car by now, one that was completely unfamiliar to Jason. Mom, I really don't remember, and I don't want to. On the contrary, Jason could remember parts of the night that he was admitted into St. Clark's Hospital. But he certainly wasn't about to tell his mother that. Broken shards of alcohol bottles scatter the floor. Bright, fluorescent lights dance across Jason's eyes. These flashbacks were all too familiar to Jason. He had woken up hungover one too many times in his life for them not to be. No, it had been the pills that turned the situation sour. He only remembered the cheers around him, edging him on. Now that he thinks of it, the feeling was quite wonderful. He looked around wildly, as if expecting pills to appear in the parking lot. Jason, honey, what were you thinking about? She murmured softly, as if able to see through his helpless eyes. Just the car. Her eyes grew wide. A bubbly look arose to her face. You remember the car? She exclaimed, now clutching onto Jason's face with a red hand. Her nose looked as if on the verge of growing stalactites. The London, icy wind whipping her caramel hair around her shoulders. Jason shrugged, shrinking away from her cold hand. After being hospitalized for this long, human contact seemed alien to him. Just thought it looked familiar. That's all. His mother nodded, as if acknowledging his distastefulness at her touch. She managed to cover up the hurt in her eyes with a glance upward at the sky. She quickly told herself that he needed time. Of course, he wouldn't be the same loving child after this traumatic experience. She was lying to herself, but she needed to know what had happened. All she knew was that he hadn't been home, and when she woke up the next day and his bed was empty, the hospital had called her. She managed to pull herself out of her reverie before he noticed anything. She turned the keys in the ignition and used the loud rumble as a cover to sniffle a stray tear back up. She started reversing out of the parking lot when Jason suddenly yelped.
What?
His mother cried out, stopping the car abruptly with a disgruntled look clouding her soft features. "I'm not wearing my seatbelt." His mother looked baffled for a moment. "I don't remember how," Jason muttered, not making eye contact. "Oh, for God's sake." His mum reached over and buckled him in. She wasn't mad, really. It was just so strange that she had no clue how to act around this new Jason. She briefly thought of how different everything would now be before reminding herself of her emotional state and decided not to. Her eyes trained on the road. She kept her mind on the task at hand for the time being. Jason, on the other hand, was allowing his mind to wander freely, stealing the occasional glance toward his mother. He felt guilty. Of course he felt guilty. But there was this dark pit of resentment towards his mum that he was unable to explain. Maybe it was him, or even his imagination, but she seemed off. "Honey, I just have to stop off at a friend's house to drop some taster cupcakes off." She owned a cupcake business on the edge of town, a successful one at that, too. Now, looking out the window, Jason gave a curt nod, not turning around. The sleek, black car turned sharply into the friend's driveway in a lovely, bucolic setting. It was a 2-story brick house, slathered in white paint and large windows adorning the front. Curtains served as a block, so passers-by would be unable to look inwards. Rose bushes enclosed the low gate that led up to the house. Jason's mother put the car in park and climbed out, taking the bright-colored cupcakes with her. Jason turned around for a split second to look at his mother. The cupcakes caught his eye, reminding him of the multicolored disco lights at the party. He looked away stiffly. The door slammed shut, and the overwhelming heat from the golden rays of sunlight settled over Jason like a thick, woolen blanket. He shivered and curled up on the seat. The silence was comforting. Meanwhile, Jason's mother had rung the doorbell of the house 3 times. She counted down in her head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "Hello, Barbara," a deep voice said. Standing in the doorway was a tall, bulky man, his unshaven face causing the mere dichotomy between Barbara's, or Jason's mother's, smooth, round face and his rather wrinkly-looking one to become more apparent by the second. However, he didn't appear to be old, just poorly taken care of. Barbara gave him a dirty look and pushed through him and into the house. She now stood in a room or junkyard. It was impossible to tell. She dropped the cupcakes on the floor indifferently. There was only one lamp with lace trimmings turned on, the room relying on this one dim source of light to be illuminated. Rubbish was strewn across the floor, empty cans of soda and cartons of milk. Barbara wrinkled her nose at the mess. "What, too low class for your liking?" he inquired with raised eyebrows. She proceeded to ignore him with a haughty tilt of her head. "Let's get down to business, Tom," she said, arms crossed on her chest. "Barbara, I couldn't give him any heavier ones, okay?" he said with downcast eyes. The teens at the party were already looking at me funny as it was. Lucky I only popped him a few pills. Barbara opened her mouth to interject, but he interrupted her. "Before you ask, I was wearing a mask, and half of them were too high to see my face anyway." "Okay," she nodded slowly. "Look, Tom, we agreed on a price. Only if you could put him in a coma for 3 months, and you achieved only one of those months. He wasn't supposed to wake up today. How the hell will I take him home with all the drug shipments lying around?" Her amber eyes blazed alive like fire. She had been subconsciously walking closer to him, as steady as possible, with her red stilettos upon rubbish. Tom sighs and pulls something out of his pocket. "I gave him 5, Barbara. 5! The kid must be crazy to be able to handle all of that." In the dim light, the pills were indiscernible to Barbara. "Tom, which ones did you give him?" Tom walked over to the curtain and pulled one of the curtains right back. He blinked in the sunlight as if he had never seen natural light before. "Ah, that's much better," he grunted. Meanwhile, out of the house, Jason was getting rather hot in the car. His mother had also been gone for an awful lot of time for just dropping off cupcakes. He tried to pull open the door, but it was locked. Weird, he thought. He reached over and unlocked the door from the driver's side. He climbed out carefully, the soft patch of grass beneath him, easing his landing. He shielded his eyes from the bright sun and noticed the pulled-back curtain on the ground floor, quickly assessing the weird events on his mother's part throughout the day so far. He decided to just take a peek before ringing the doorbell. Jason crept stealthily up the path and through the low gate. He positioned himself in a way that his body would be invisible to anyone in the home by the other drawn curtain. So he was able to lean a little to the right and see what was going on. "I must look very strange to any passers-by," he thought to himself, stifling a nervous giggle. He tended to laugh when he was nervous. It had gotten him into heaps of trouble during test-taking at school. But Jason couldn't care less about school and their stupid, restrictive rules. Balancing mainly on his right foot, he leaned a little to the right. His eyes were met with quite a scene. But Jason was blind to all when he saw it. The pills, the pure white, and streaks of childish yellow throughout the little pill. His memories rushed back in a torrent, and as he looked at the man, the more familiar the face became. He was the guy who popped the pills for him and then dragged him out of the party. He watched through the clear glass as his mother paid the man. Suicide pact. Every Friday, my parents cook the most delicious turkey that has ever existed on Earth. They use natural ingredients that I have never heard of before. Every time they make it, I ask them for the recipe. They just never tell me. Instead, they looks at me with a smile mixed with sadness and joy, and tell me that one day, when their time has come to pass, they will tell me. Tell me the secret ingredient. This is the routine that happens every week, every Friday. Little do they know that their time will be my time too. Although I know that my parents won't tell me the recipe, I give it another shot. Walk up to them, give them my best smile, take their hands, and ask. But they already know what I am going to say. They grin and shakes their heads, nodding towards my room, sending me the message to get ready for bed. I sigh and slump towards my room. I stop in front of my door. The door is decorated with pictures from my favorite band. The picture on the very left makes me smile. It's the picture of my favorite band member making a silly face. I laugh dreamily and stare into his brown eyes, but I'm not the only one laughing. Soon enough, my older brother Luke is pounding me on the back and laughing. Not really a nice laugh either. "Lola, you've got to stop this," he chokes out. "Stop what?" I demand, my brows furrowed. "Stop joking around with your pictures. It's too funny to handle." I raise my eyebrows high and stare at him, long and hard. Finally, I shoot him a glare and step into my room. I don't forget to slam the door right into his laughing face. See, this is the reason I need to get away from my family. My brother. He is so annoying. You wish that you weren't born. And I don't. Yes, I am killing myself because of my brother. It was either this or run away. But if you run away, you just get kidnapped and killed anyway. So what's the difference? Once safely in my room, and my brother gone, I sneak into my closet and pull out the small but strong bulletin board that I got from my grandmother on my birthday. I forgot to check yesterday's square on the calendar, so I will do it with today's. I take the white chalk I have been using the past month out of the box that it was in and slash 2 white lines next to the others. When done, I carefully put everything back in my closet and lie on my bed. Breathing slowly, I run down the suicide plan in my mind. When I come back to my room from brushing my teeth, something in the room is different. The lights are off. Did Mom come in here? Dad couldn't, because he's in Miami for work. Oh no. What if my brother came in here? I try to shrug it off and crawl under my covers. The whooshing of the wind outside quickly drowns me in my sleep, and all my thoughts are lost. The next morning, I get up late. I quickly eat breakfast and get ready for school. I arrive at school on time, but I'm still worried about the lights turned off yesterday. Someone must have went into my room, did something, and forgotten that the lights had already been on when they went in. My worried look must be severe because Angie, my best friend, asks me if I am all right at lunch. "Oh, I'm fine, I reply. Her head is cocked to the side, and she studies me closely. I try to give her a brief smile and shrug it off. This is a good idea, because Angie knows that my shrugs are all truthful and intentional. I feel so bad, though, for betraying and lying to my friend, even though she can help me get out of this mess. I remind myself that some things are meant to be dealt with alone and individually, but I still feel bad. So before the lunch bell rings, I ask her if she wants to come over, and her face lightens. She tells me, of course. When school ends, we meet up at our usual spot near the gate and start to walk towards my house. We talk about the usual things: hallway gossip, grades, and boys. When we get to my house, we watch a movie and make slime, which fortunately takes my mind off things. Before Angie leaves, she hugs me tight and whispers into my ear that she knows something is wrong and that she can help me anytime with it. She tells me that I am never alone. If only that were true. Even after our time together, Angie and I only used up 3 hours of our time. I still have 1 hour left to chill. I get bored, so I decide to slash today's mark earlier than usual and head into my closet. When I pull out the bulletin board, though, all the tally marks are gone. I'm so shocked that I gasp out loud. What? What? I stutter. I was not going to let this go. If someone had done this, only my brother could. My mother wouldn't do such an evil thing. But if my brother had read the notebook, then he would know that he was being such a pain. I wait until he comes home from work and confront him. It did not work as well as I thought, though. He convinces me that I can't kill myself because of one person, that I need more bad things in my life to hate myself enough and kill myself. We sort it out, and he swears to not be much of a pain anymore. I guess some things are meant to be dealt with by talking and not action. I have learned my lesson. Countdown to death. I stared at the wall with half-lidded eyes and gulped. My breath was hoarse and croaky, my throat dry and absent of hydration. My hands trembled uncontrollably, scrambling for the cheap chalk, even though my eyes never once graced the sight of the white stick. My exhales were never rhythmic, constantly choking on the air. as I mentally tried to inhale and exhale at the same time. I looked at every line drawn individually, memorizing what each meant to every detail of the messy scratch. There drawn were tallies, 42 singular ones, 8 full ones, with 2 to spare, to be exact. Each resembled each day I was kept here, in this hell. And they were slowly counting down to the inevitable release. I had 3 more weeks to fully understand my limited time here. My eyes suddenly widened as I let out a scream of terror. A scream that my fellow prisoners were very accustomed to. A scene of trauma washed over my eyes and sent my body crashing down onto the floor in pure fear. A sense of panic overwhelmed me, and my body began to sweat. All my movements henceforth were uncontrollable and predicted by the past. My emotions were painfully drowned by regretful memories that I begged to forget. I could only watch as my gravest mistake haunted me once again. "Paulette!" a gruff voice called, alerting me and distracting me from my duties. Paulette Ann Hadley. That's me. Short blue hair and matching piercing eyes. I'd dream about how they held the essence of the pure sky. But those thoughts were the only fantasies that I used to distract me from the life that I dreaded so much. Then again, I was very far from pure, even before the incident. "Paulette!" they shouted again after only a few seconds of waiting. Impatient as always, incompetent as always, the voice belonged to my master, the Earl of Daventry, Sir Peter Holmes, a sorrowful old man who spent his seemingly endless days laying in his bed or sat in his office, scoffing his face with the fatty meals the chefs were forced to cook to fulfill his never-ending stomach. He ate his feelings. I'd feel sorry for him if he weren't such a bastard. "Paulette!" he screeched for the 3rd time, all in the span of 20 seconds, so loud that I saw the family of mice that lived in the corner of the laundry room scurry across the dusty cobblestone floors in fright. I rolled my eyes in frustration and slapped the grungy old rag I used to clean the counter into the rusty steel sink. I tightened my apron and smoothed out the traditional maid's dress, all while cursing to myself in irritation. My uniform was nothing out of the ordinary for a low-classed maid like myself. Black and white, all the way through, of course. A short black dress with a white apron, white stockings, and black buckled shoes. I hurried up the grand staircase of the large Daventry estate, my feet thanking me for gifting them of a different surface to stand on that wasn't rough, uneven stone. Luscious carpet was certainly a lovely change from grubby concrete. Reaching my master's doors was something I was always dreaded because of what lay on the other side. I pressed a hand against the shiny wood, recently dusted and glossed by yours truly. The smooth touch of the spruce was nice against my sore and worn fingertips. "Master," I greeted with a sickly sweet tone, a forced smile painting my features. I could almost feel my left eye twitch in pent-up hatred. "Paulette!" he roared, his voice deep and gravelly. He was laid down on his satin sheets that held many empty plates and cups from the meals I had brought since this morning. They were already piling up. This sight was nothing new to me. This is what I spent my life's work on. This is what drove me insanity. A plate mounted with Victoria sponge cake rested on his rising and falling stomach. Oh, how I wanted to rip it open. "Yes, master?" I repeated, my voice bearing the same bittersweetness as every phrase that escaped my lips directed to my mortifying master. "I don't pay you to lounge around. I have been waiting for hours," he scolded, only to choke on a strawberry that had been layered between the sponge. Bits of red fruit spewed out into the air and dirtied the satin sheets with spit and berry. I cringed at the sight, but tried to contain the look because of the presence of my judgmental master. I enjoyed watching him struggle. "I was just finishing up the washing, master," I responded simply, never giving him the gift of eye contact. "I don't care what you were doing," he snapped with a snarl. "Clean up this mess. I am lying in filth. Hurry up, woman." He turned to his side, without giving a care about the plate that slid off his bloated stomach and smudged jam onto the expensive emerald. "Clean me up too," he ordered, with his own ugly, toothy cringe, showing off grimy yellow teeth. I rolled my shoulders backwards and relaxed my joints in a desperate attempt to contain my rage. I took 3 deep breaths through clenched teeth and slowly walked over to my master, my anger increasing with every step. I piled the empty plates into stacks and balanced them on my forearms to get the task done in one go and get away from my master as soon as possible. My muscles tensed under the weight of so much weight and sent my body to lean forward uncontrollably and my face to squish into the duvet. This would be a simple, clumsy topple to anyone but myself. Due to the superiority complex my master harbored, a deathly scream was sent sounding around the master bedroom. "Paulette, how dare you assault me like this?" He shrieked like a toddler as he pulled away from my body, as if I were a parasite. I gulped, my body pulsing with overwhelming fury. My breaths became hollow and uneven, my lungs aching at the lack of oxygen I provided. Sorry, I stuttered, my voice dipping from a forced sweetness to a deep sarcasm. A sore cough followed my words, and a ripple crawled up my spine like a wave of violent anxiety washing over me without placing my eyes upon it. My fingertips grazed the blade of a knife covered in grease. My eyes widened And all of a sudden, my movements were prioritized over my thoughts. My grip tightened on the kitchen knife, the sharp blade digging into my finger's flesh and drawing blood. The red liquid sunk into the satin and stained the fabric. But that was no problem, as lots more blood was soon to follow after. I let out a whimper as pain soared through my nerves. But I paid no matter. My only mind's focus was on the man who stared at me in confusion and growing anger. I couldn't care less about his emotions because they soon morphed into ones of pain and shock as I stabbed the tip of the knife into his belly. I pulled my hand off the blade and smeared my blood onto his naked stomach. I subconsciously let out a joyful yelp at the sight of his blood mixing with mine and creating an uncomfortable solution of growing red. I pressed my uninjured hand against the wooden handle of the knife and pushed the blade further into my master's stomach. I hastily pulled out the deadly weapon and plunged it back into his stomach. Blood splattered onto my dress, onto the bed, and onto my face. I repeated this sequence several times, the knife constantly going in and out of the body and splashing blood. With every cut, more blood seeped and deepened the stain on my usually perfectly clean apron. My face was now smeared in the metallic-smelling liquid and was dripping down my chin as if I were slurping soup, but missed my mouth. Master died after just a few stabs due to bleeding out and contagious infection. But that didn't stop my excitement. I sliced as much flesh as I could, covering as much surface area as I could, and slathering it with fresh, pungent blood. I made sure not to leave any area untouched with my bubbling rage. My lips twitched as a laugh escaped my throat, choking on itself and departing in the form of an evil cackle. I doubled down in laughter as pure ecstasy ran through my veins. I bounced on the expensive bed and headed towards the limp head of my master. I swiftly sliced the knife across my master's throat and admired the way sickly liquid swam down his wrinkled neck and ran down his chest like separating rivers. That blood quickly melded with that of his stomach and made a pool that looked like it had originated from the depths of hell itself. I twirled on the bed, never minding my steps that prodded into my master's corpse. The authorities arrived before I had taken my leave, and I was seized before I could flee. I was captured before I could even reminisce my actions. I was taken to Egan Prison and remained there till my death. 3 months, to be exact. It was not a natural death, but a chosen one, confirmed by those who didn't even know me. I let out a gap as the walls of my cell reappeared around me, and the touch of the cold concrete floor returned to my fingertips. My eyes widened as I took sight of the clean wall in front of me. They were gone. My tallies were gone. I let out a cough and a choke. Help! Help! I screamed, throwing myself at the wall and slamming a fist upon it in distress. They're gone. They're gone. Who did this? I demanded, punching the wall and watching blood draw my knuckles and splatter onto the gray. Your day has come, Hadley. You're finally free. A voice mused, their tone echoing throughout my secluded cell. What? I gaped, blinking like a confused dog. Free? Well, free from life, of course. They chuckled maliciously, taunting me with their freedom. I chose not to turn towards the guard that addressed me so rudely. My eyes continuously trained on the blank wall in front of me. I have a few more weeks. I don't want to die. I cried out, tears brimming my eyes and blurring my vision. Should have thought about that before you killed a man. The guard glared, pulling open the door of my cell and approaching me with handcuffs. I pressed my back against the wall, but there was no escaping death. I was quickly seized and yanked down the hallway, past my fellow death row inmates. I hung my head low, hair shadowing my eyes and creating an eerie effect. My breaths were loud as anxiety built up inside of me. A panic attack approaching at a tremendous speed that I wished to slow down. I stumbled over my footing several times, each one getting more clumsy and emotional. By now, tears were streaming down my cheeks and creating thin lines of cleanliness that contrasted with the dirt and grime that littered my flesh. I did nothing to stop the loud sobs that slipped through my trembling and muttering lips, weeping as dread and hysteria flowed through every pore. We soon reached a standstill where I was forced into a chair. I stared into vicious brown eyes that reflected my own teary ones. They held no sympathy or remorse, just a simple hue of cheek. I inhaled and exhaled harshly, every breath increasing in volume, mass, and sound. Leather-worn straps were tightened over my wrists and ankles, and a rusty metal brace was placed firmly at my temples. Fear soared through my veins like rockets. I pulled and struggled against my restraints that were quickly cutting off my blood flow. I let out screams for mercy, but they went unheard. Let me go, please. It's not my time. I have weeks. I can't die, I wailed, shaking my head violently in a weak attempt to get rid of the brace that held me so firmly. A loud slap sounded throughout the dimly lit room. My head was thrown to the side, and a pulsing sting was sent flaring at my right cheek. My pleads and sobs ceased. Just a quiet whimper left in its place as a final emotion of sorrow took its toll. Shut it, woman, a guard hissed. Paulette Ann Hadley, you are sentenced to death via electrocution for the murder of Sir Peter Holmes on January 16th, 1898. "Do you have any last words?" Another guard recited, his tone bearing no sincerity whatsoever. I took a deep breath, lifting my gaze and meeting his to dramatize my following words. A scowl was painted at my lips, and furrowed eyebrows of anger took over my features. He deserved it. I growled with nothing but rage in my voice, a pull at the lever, and a crackle of wiring. Electricity was sent pulsing through my brain and sparked an agony that tore scream after scream from my dry throat. Quickly, my mind was sent spiraling into the endless dark abyss known as death, life, and death. It took him 10 seconds to die. There's a lot he could have thought of in those 10 seconds. Likely among them was how he didn't want to die. There's a fear of the unknown in the heart of every human, an awareness that one day the end will come, that you won't have any control over it. Cultures around the world have stories of what will happen in death. Will you arrive at the pearly gates? Do you need payment for the ferryman to bring you to the afterlife? Or will you find yourself born again and again until you achieve enlightenment, regardless of what he believed in life? In the final moments, did it bring him comfort? Did it bring him peace? Or did he think of the past? Living by the lake, first fearing its depth as a tadpole before emerging as a conqueror, reliving the carefree moments of youth, of the rocks and sand between toes, and the sap from climbing trees, growing up with first 2 parents, then only one, knowing the sorrow that it can bring to one so young. Long nights at the bonfire, first with families, then with friends. The first look, the fire-glow skin, and the reflective eyes. With her came quick smiles, soft hands, and first times. The boy becoming a man as nights lengthened and the sky darkened. She left with the autumn breeze, and he left that lake too. He woke early and trained and marched. He climbed 4-meter walls, crossed ditches, spent hours at the firing range, and completed field exercises in combat gear. Discipline and mental fortitude brought on new meaning. And then they weren't exercises anymore. He would not have lingered on his military tours, but he would have seen faces of his comrades, dead and alive. With those that couldn't be saved, there'd be the guilt, the sadness, the regret. With those who survived, he'd always have a bond. His superiors who directed troops across the land. Civilians he had helped, who he hoped were doing as well as they could in a war-ravaged country. Together, they had molded him into a man with iron will and direction, rough around the edges, with kindness deep within his heart. It was a life that he'd relived in nightmares. When he left the military, he came back to the lake. Its calmness was a balm for his soul. Watching over it and the people who surrounded it calmed his mind and steadied his heart. His work was now to protect and serve the people, to wear a different uniform. He was wearing that uniform as he died. Would he be thinking of his family? He'd never been much of a cook, and he spent many nights at the Main Street diner. She too had come back to the lake, escaping the corporate ladder for the hustle and bustle of the small town, taking over the diner from the previous owners. They sat at the same table, night after night, week after week, month after month. She was a strong woman, able to stand on her own 2 feet, and with him as an equal. They'd chosen to walk their paths together, 2 homes and hearts becoming one. She'd know that this was a possibility with his work, and had never failed to say goodbye as he left. Would he take solace in this, knowing that she'd feel sorrow, grief, and pain, but that she'd be able to continue without him? Or would he worry the most about the pain in a tinier heart, to a soul that was just beginning to blossom? Ariel was 9 years old, his little girl who he had spent countless hours as a baby, just counting 10 fingers and 10 toes. He taught her to ride a bike and throw a ball. They'd planned a camping trip for the summer. What would she think of his never coming back? Would she understand that it was his duty? Would she resent it and him? Would she remember all the times they'd shared? Would he be able to think at all? Would the pain override his thoughts in his last moments? Would his world focus only on that and the sounds that echoed around him? From the initial sound of the gunshot to the impact, the pain in his abdomen, and the retaliatory shot from his partner that took down the killer. They had been called for attempted shoplifting at a gas station near the highway. The cashier had caught him, and one of the customers became concerned when the situation had begun to escalate and called the police. They hadn't known about the gun. They hadn't known that the man had gone off his medications. What he did see was that there was a young boy in the store as well, no more than 12. Felix had gone in to get snacks while his dad filled the truck with gas. It was at him that the gun had been pointed in that moment. It was Felix that was saved when he died. Was it Felix that he thought of? The young boy he'd sacrificed his life to save. How would he spend his second chance at life? Would he go to the funeral and see the little girl crying in a black dress? Would he see her around school as his eyes closed for the last time? Would he see into the future? Felix becoming Ariel's self-appointed big brother and guardian, forever tied together by tragedy. Growing up together at the lake, him pushing her when required and comforting her when needed. Her ensuring that he focused on schoolwork as much as sports. Her scared and angry when he told her he was going to the police academy. That he wanted to help others like her father, who had saved him. Through times of luck and difficulty, Ariel and Felix lived them together. And one day, down by the lake where they had grown up, where her father grew up, Ariel would walk down the aisle to him with her mother by her side. Ariel and Felix would live a long life together at the lake with their family. It wasn't always easy, with fights and sadness, but they came through. When their son was born, they named him Liam, after his grandfather, and sometimes they'd sit on the porch as dusk settled around them, holding hands, thinking about the man who'd given them both so much. Though he would miss all of those moments, the foresight and knowledge that they would be okay, that they'd live a life full of happiness and love, would that give him true peace? For in those 10 seconds, Liam lived. Betrayal. Mr. Nicholas, you have been caught for breaking and entering every house in the world once a year for as long as anyone can remember. That was what the judge said. Anything to say in your defense? Your Honor, I was delivering presents. For children, they were happy, stuttered Santa. A liar! You gave me a toy doll when I was 12 years old, yelled an adult. Well, I thought you wanted one, said Santa, wondering if this was a nightmare. And you didn't wipe your feet on the mat when you came in, said a very tall and skinny woman who was the shape of a pole. Now I have to walk around my house with the smell of reindeer dung. It's that bad? I sleep next to my reindeers, and they don't smell that bad. One very fat man, who looked like if you threw him from the tallest building, he would bounce, said, one day when I was little, I woke up on Christmas and went to my Christmas tree. I saw a box of chocolates, but guess what? It was out of date, guessed the judge. It was covered in reindeer poop, said the skinny lady. It was half-eaten? Asked another man. Wrong! He had put it under the tree. I couldn't reach it. Everyone let out a gasp, as if it was worse than what they said. The judge banged his hammer against the wooden plate. All right, it's settled. A lifetime in prison. He was shipped off to a prison for magical things. There he met the Tooth Fairy and Frosty the Snowman, a black bird with an injured wing, and a man called Jeff, who claimed he was a muffin, and Neil Gaiman. He did not know what Neil Gaiman was doing in there, but he told wonderful stories of Norse gods and a girl called Coraline. Meanwhile, the elves were relaxing in the North Pole. Every day, they would congratulate each other on how they got rid of Mr. Claus, and that it was about time that they got rid of the fatty. The reindeers were happy because they thought Santa stinked. But Mrs. Claus was the most excited. She could finally fulfill her dreams of playing video games all day, every day. Thousands of years passed, and Santa became more restless in his cage. The Tooth Fairy had been eaten by his bird more times than able to be counted. And the immortal. Gaiman had told thousands of tales already, and Frosty had melted more than 1,000,000 drops of water now. And Jeff, well, he sat there more than 1,000,000 minutes already. Everyone was tired, and they were sick of seeing the same things every day: stone, metal, and plastic. One night, when the guards were walking past Santa's cell, he extended one thin finger and curled it around the key. He then pulled back his hand and put the key under his tongue in his mouth. He later took out the key and began to try and push it in on the other side. His fingers fumbled, and unfortunately, he dropped the key. From inside his pocket, he retrieved a foldable walking stick and began to prod at the key, trying to pull it back when a mosquito landed on the back of his hand and sank its sucker into his flesh. Santa dropped the stick. He slapped the insect, turning it into a fat pile of greenish-yellow slime. He told his bird to go in and fetch the stick. The bird did as he was told. Santa continued to prod at the key when Neil Gaiman couldn't take it anymore, and said that he should tell the bird to go and fetch the key instead of the stick. "You're right, so smart," said Santa in understanding. "Go get the key." A few hours later, he had escaped his cell and was now unlocking the cells of his friends. "All right, Muffin Man, you're okay now," said Santa. "I need my rock to turn into a muffin again," said Jeff gloomily. "Where is it then?" sighed Santa. "It's on the second floor of the third room to the right." "Have you been there?" asked Mr. Claus. "Duh, what do you think? Then why didn't you take it yourself?" "I didn't know how," said Jeff. It took some time, but the group eventually found the staircase and got into the specified room. Santa picked up the rock and said, "What do you mean you didn't know how?" asked Santa. Suddenly, 2 security guards stepped out of the shadows and told them to freeze and drop the rock. Santa leaped out of the closest window, thinking that his reindeers would catch him. He instead landed on a very fat moose in the middle of a barn. "Come down here, it's safe," he yelled at the window. One by one, they each plopped down Gaiman on a horse, Jeff on a pig, Frosty on a cow, and the Tooth Fairy on a very cross farmer. The fairy produced a chain of teeth out of her dress pocket and wrapped it around the farmer, like one would do to a horse. The group, holding on to their animals, eventually rode to the town where Santa's trial had been held, just in time for Christmas Eve. At the first house, belonging to the lady that had said her floor stank of reindeer dung, Frosty gave her some sanitizer under her tree. At the second house, belonging to the adult who complained about having been given a doll at the age of 12, Gaiman gave her 2 black button eyes and a sewing needle. And at the last house, belonging to the man, had complained about the chocolates. Santa gave him Jeff in his muffin form and put him on a plate. next to the tree. Santa thanked everyone, and he went back to his home, the North Pole. The elves and reindeers groaned and sighed when they saw his familiar red suit. They kicked him out and built a wall around the village of Mrs. Claus. Santa realized that he was tired of seeing the elves, so he trained his bird to be a professional polar bear and penguin trainer, and everyone lived happily ever after. Attempted murder. New case, Noella. Thump. A stack of files in a manila folder lands on the desk in front of me, sending my papers flying. Great. Now my spotless office has papers everywhere. I huff and look up to glare at my boss's departing back. No case summary? He turns back, talking a few strides into the office and closing the door behind him. That's the good thing about being one of the top-ranking detectives in our firm. I get an office to myself. Unlike others such as Otto and Shorelick, who have to share one, it gives the privacy and thinking space one needs when uncovering confidential cases. Young woman, aged in mid-20s. Her name is Enya Brown. Enya Brown? The Enya Brown I rescued from a dark alley a year ago? I turn back to him, nodding in acknowledgement. She's reported claims of stalking and attempted murder. Interesting. Any reason why I was given the case instead of the others? I might be a detective chief superintendent in our firm, but there should be plenty of others qualified to take this case, especially those in his inner circle who don't have other things such as helping to run the faculty to do. Celine's in Egypt, Henrik's in Germany, Jericho's sick, and Manuel, Maxime, and Molino are busy. I don't want anybody else but the best detectives for this case. It's pretty serious, and there's little evidence at this stage. Only the best could pull it off. He pauses. Oh, and the client specifically asked for you. Make the Annery Ferralis Detective Agency proud Noella. Then he departs, leaving me to ponder the case. That still leaves Jane and Danny unaccounted for, and I have no doubt he knew that. But what's happened to Enya since that night in the alley? I told her to contact me if anything was amiss, and I've talked to her since then. But it's been precisely 13 months, 2 weeks, and 16 hours since I rescued her from the alley, and the incidents date back at least 2 years. Why now? It was 8:30 in the evening, and I'd stayed back at work a bit longer to finish up writing a case report. The weather was miserable, having rained just minutes before, and the cobblestones were slick with water. A yellowed glow came from the rustic street lamps along the pavement, limning the edges of my briefcase with gold. Then I heard the scuffles, the thud, and the scream. Alarmed, I raced towards the sound, approaching silently as to not raise any alarm. It came from the far reaches of an alleyway that from experience I knew to be a dead end. The scream sounded female. The grunt that followed was male. I peered into the alleyway to see an auburn-haired female struggling against a bulky, dark-haired male's solid grip. She was pinned to the wall, and the brute was touching her in awful places, pulling at her clothing and drawing a dagger as she fought back. She stilled at the sight of the knife, and knowing her chances were slim, I slipped silently down the alleyway. Within moments, I had my arms around the brute's neck and a foot hooked behind his ankle. He slashed with the knife, and without a second thought, I'd kicked it from his grasp. With the brute pinned on the ground and his neck held in submission, I choked the air out of his lungs, enough to render him unconscious, but no further. Quickly, I picked up my briefcase, glancing up to the young woman before me. She still hadn't run. "Are you all right?" "I'm okay, I suppose. Thank you." She looked away down the alley. "Will he be okay?" "He's just unconscious. He'll wake up in a few minutes, so we should head off. Do you need somewhere to stay?" She shook her head, but her eyes were distant. I shouldered off my coat, wrapping it around her shivering form. "Come on, girl. Let's get you somewhere safe. We'll get you nice and warm." Within 5 minutes, I directed her to a nearby hotel, had her swaddled in blankets and a cup of hot cocoa before her. She was too shaken to ask her any questions, but I could only assume what had happened. I remained with her for as long as I could, heading off home before my flatmate would worry about me. As I stood to leave, I retrieved a business card from my briefcase. "If you need anything, hun, just give me a call. I'm happy to help anytime you need it." I slipped it onto the table in front of her and quietly let myself out. The card on the table before her read DCS, Miss Noella Anderson, Anari Ferrales, Detective Agency, PH 0427738813, email noella.afta.org. Peeking my head into Skorlik Kuhn and Otto Schuster's office, it comes as no surprise that Otto is playing video games, and Skorlik is sitting on the windowsill reading a book. "New case, fellas. Briefing in my office in 10. An acknowledging grunt from Shorlick. "But I'm in the middle of the boss level, Noella. If you make me go now, I'll lose all my progress." Otto whines. "Suck it up, Otto. I've given you 10 minutes. That's enough. You shouldn't be playing video games anyway. You know that." He whines again, and I leave them to their activities, returning to my office. 10 minutes later, Skorlik enters my office, dragging a sullen Otto behind him by the wrist. We discuss the case, examining the details given and the evidence provided, both photographed and in hard copy. Skorlik and I figure out a plan forward, while Otto sulks. He'll confirm the DNA sample, while I trace emails and calls to Enya. Then we'll interview neighbors and retrieve security footage. Then assemble the evidence and incriminate the offender. What did you find? I ask my co-workers. DNA specimen confirmed, Skorlik says curtly. Insights, Mr. Kuhn. There were a few sets of DNA on the letter, including Ennia's own, but I narrowed down the suspect list to 2 brothers, Avery and Scott Lancaster, and another man called Jeremiah Hayes. They're the ones that fit Miss Brown's description. Mr. Hayes is suspected to be a friend of the 2 brothers. He could be involved with the case. Skorlik Kuhn sights back at his chair and glances at Otto Schuster, the other detective on my team for this case. Anything new, Mr. Schuster? Quit the formalities, please. Nothing new, but I have a question. Skorlik, were both brothers' DNA on the letter? Indeterminate. Why? Unconfirmed. Well, I personally think the brothers are twins. Just saying. Any evidence, Otto? No. Search the database, though. I get the feeling they are. I search the database, and sure enough, they're twins. Paternal twins at that. Huh. Look at that. Otto was right. They're identical twins, which explains why it's determinate. They have the same DNA. Skorlik nods, and Otto grins smugly. Well, fellas, guess we have our list of suspects. I traced the anonymous threat emails and calls to Miss Brown, to Avery Lancaster's house, and areas that he's reportedly visited. Oh, and it's not listed in the case. But after she was cornered in the lane, the ID card was found on the unconscious man, and it said, Avery P. Lancaster, precisely the person all our other evidence has pointed to. Other evidence, such as him being one of Ennia's ex-boyfriends and being one of Ennia's suggestions of the suspect. That Avery guy must be some sort of creep, considering the things on that file, Otto commented. I wonder what his middle name is. Peter? More like P for psychopath, I mumble under my breath. Psychopath starts with S idiot, Otto says, turning to Skorlik. He puts his hands up, trying to tell Otto it wasn't him, but Otto gives him a skeptical look. Dumbass, it starts with P. Skorlik mumbles, glancing back at me. Meeting over. I get up to leave as they start to squabble. Psychopath starts with P, Otto. You should have learned that in high school, I say, leaving Skorlik's relieved face and Otto's infuriated expression behind me. Walking door to door in Avery Lancaster's neighborhood, Skorlik, Otto, and I have found very little. The young family that lives across the road said that he's a nice guy that tends to keep to himself, but they'd only moved in recently, so could not provide much detail. The lesbian couple and the old man living either side didn't know anything of interest. Overall, there wasn't too much evidence that they could provide, but they agreed to let us view their security feeds that had a view of his house. That only leaves interviewing Avery himself. Knock, knock. The hollow sound reverberates through my fist as I knock on Avery Lancaster's front door. Good morning. Is there anything I can do for you? Avery's puzzled face steps out from behind the door. Yes, sir. I am Detective Chief Superintendent Noella Anderson, and these are my colleagues, Otto Schuster and Shorlick Kuhn. We would like to talk to you for a minute, if that's okay with you. Of course. Is anything wrong, miss? He looks genuinely oblivious and concerned, and I'm nearly convinced he could be a great actor. We'll speak inside, please. Was it my brother? I told him that rock adventure was a bad idea. I raise a brow. Your brother is fine. If we may? He lets us in, leading us through impeccably neat rooms and into the dining room. It's business time. Do you know why we're here, Mr. Lancaster? If it's not my brother being a doofus, then no, I don't. Should I know? Perhaps. We are here to ask you a few questions about Enya Brown. Brief pain flickers through his expression. Is Enya okay? He says, barely a whisper, considering what's been happening in her life lately. She is doing rather well. You wouldn't happen to know anything about her recent activity, would you? No, I don't. I haven't spoken to her since we broke up, and I haven't seen her since. Interesting. Did you know that she's filed a case for stalking and attempted murder with the AFDA? She? What? You are the prime suspect, and all the evidence leads to you. So if you could tell us the truth, that would be greatly appreciated. He nods. Now tell me again, when did you last see her? About 2 years ago. We went out with a few friends, but I didn't really talk to her. It was still awkward from the breakup. Right. Was anything of notice said? Scott said she was hot. Enya ignored me most of the evening. But no, nothing of notice. Now why did you and Enya break up? She was going to study overseas, and my grandmother had just died, so the timing wasn't great for either of us. It pained us both greatly, but we knew it was the best for both of us. Neither of us have been in a relationship since, at least as far as I'm aware. Would you be jealous if another guy showed interest in her? No? I would respect Enya's decision to move on. She deserves to enjoy her life. Oh, come on, Otto bursts out. Quit the sappiness. If you haven't seen her in 2 years, then explain why 1 year ago she was attacked in a dark alley by a man fitting your description, wielding a knife. A man, I might add, that had an ID card with the name Avery Lancaster on it, or why your name was encoded into a death threat letter to Enya, Shorlick adds, and why the threatening calls and emails were traced back to your very house. Avery gets paler and paler with every question, as if realizing that he has no way out, realizing that he didn't hide his tracks well enough, and he was caught. I don't understand what you mean. You hear what we said, Mr. Lancaster. Your DNA was found on the letter, and there are all these other cases of evidence. Do you mind if we have a look around? We show him our search warrant, and he nods solemnly. Avery leads us around the house, showing us through the different rooms of his house. There's nothing much of notice in any of the places we search. This guy is pretty good at hiding his evidence, And this is the guest bedroom. My brother keeps some of his stuff here sometimes. We nod and have a poke around. We're just about to finish up when I spot a discarded plastic bag in the wardrobe. What's that, Mr. Lancaster? I don't know. Some of my brother's stuff. He visits sometimes and keeps some stuff here. I don't monitor his stuff. This room is the only place I allow him to put his stuff wherever he wants, and I won't clean it up. May we look inside? Of course. We open the bag curiously, with our latex gloves on, as not to disturb the possible specimens. The bag opens to reveal a pair of worn, woolen, fingerless gloves, a roll of sticky tape, an ID card bearing Avery's details, and a few folded pieces of paper. Skorlik pulls out one of the pieces of paper and reads it aloud for my dearest Enya. Really, I thought you'd have noticed by now. Our connection is true, and I love you dearly. Must you always hide from me? Show me what you can do in bed. Can you do that? Otherwise, I will finish what I started that night in the alley. If I can't have you, no one can. Terror upon you, shall you not oblige? Take what you want from me, but I will always prevail. Do not fail me. Love from your dearest. I miss you. Dark, much? But that sounds an awful lot like a jealous lover's letter. Did you write this, Mr. Lancaster? Avery shakes his head, and his face is deathly pale from fear. Fear for Enya, or fear for himself? Well, you have a lot of evidence against you, sir. I would recommend you start telling the truth, or you'll be imprisoned for lying to authoritative figures. Understood? I only wish to tell you the truth, ma'am. I did not know that letter was here, nor do I know who wrote it. May we take it for evidence? Of course, ma'am. And with that, Otto, Shorlick, and I take our leave, sealing the evidence in decontaminated specimen bags and leaving Avery's ashen face behind. So, what do you think of our adventure today? Avery's house sure was suspicious. Yeah, I think we have enough evidence now, Otto adds. I think Avery is innocent, Skorlik murmurs under his breath. I cut my glare across the table to him. What? Did I hear that correctly? Otto shrugs. You do understand, Shorlick, that every single piece of evidence we have points to Avery Lancaster. But maybe that's what the criminal wants us to think. Everything points to Avery. But if he truly did it, there would be some degree of a cover-up. This is all in the open. It's too easy. Mr. Lancaster's DNA is on every specimen. His pining for a lost love threaded through threat letters, class, and emails, all traced to his house, a house his brother visits often. Think, Noella, think. Are you saying it was Avery's brother, Scott, that is doing this? What would be his motive, though? It makes no sense, Skorlik. It's obvious. It was Avery. Check the cams for the night of the alley attack. I pull up the feeds from various residents' security cameras and go back to the date of the attack. We watch as a car pulls up in front of Avery's house, and Avery gets out, knocking on the front door. Must be Scott, I conclude. And sure enough, a second Avery greets him at the door. They go inside, and about an hour later, one of the Lancaster twins comes out holding a plastic bag, and there's a lump under his hoodie near his hip. The knife he pulled on Enya. Turning up the audio, we hear a voice yell from inside the house. "Can you get me milk while you're at the supermarket? Thanks. See ya, Scott." Scott comes outside and gets into one of the cars that had been parked outside before he'd arrived, presumably Avery's, and drives off. Why didn't he take his own? We skip ahead to the dates of the emails and calls from Avery's house, and Scott had visited on every single one of them. Didn't Avery mention something about Scott having the hots for Enya? And he seemed pretty concerned for her, Otto suggests. But Skorlik and I's attention is elsewhere. The letter. The realization dawns on both of us, and as I peer over his shoulder, I notice something I hadn't when he'd read it out. Each sentence is on a new line, and the first letter of every sentence forms another message. From Scott L. My face slackens with the realization. Do you see it, Skorlik? He nods solemnly. It all makes sense. Their DNA is the same. Being twins, Scott tried to avert the attention from him, turning it on his identical twin. But ultimately, his diversions failed. He's been found out. Otto. It was Scott. The letters and the ID card prove it. It was Scott, I murmur. So it was actually Scott C. Lancaster, the evil side to his angelic brother Avery, Otto says in an exaggerated, scheming voice. Seems to me like his initial was a foretelling. C for criminal. He smirks, and we all burst out laughing, the relief enveloping me that Enya would finally be safe and that we'd done it. What would you like, sir? Sir, we need you. Ed, please don't panic. Tell me what happened. A man died at 4th Rose Street in Pi A Trust Bakery. Pray, tell his name. Robert Jr. Business tycoon Robert Jr. A sudden alarm switches on in my mind. You are right, sir. I hang up the phone. A new case is like coffee shots for me. Sudden shots of energy with a sudden smell of success. Being a private detective was tough in 1959. The remnants of World War were still haunting people's minds. So basically, everyone was behind food and money. Hence, the rise of murders and death of rich men were the constant headline of newspapers and weekly magazines. The police were sometimes behind the culprit, or were sometimes the culprit themselves. My first successful case was about Dorothy Maddock, a murder mystery that had shaken the neighborhood. At that time, I was 19, who had only read Sherlock Holmes as his curriculum and used to write some articles for a newspaper column. Back then, I took the case for justice, not for fame or success. With my wit and observation, I nabbed the murderer, to everyone's surprise and dismay. The success of the case made fame kiss my toes, but the police grew cold feelings towards me. First, the bitterness was one-sided. Later, with the continued collision of our thinking and ideas, it became a competition for us to prove each other wrong. Coming to the case, Robert Jr. was famous as well as an established businessman. He was constantly in the newspaper due to the rounds of an affair between him and a beautiful singer. The case was a goldmine for the press because now it had glamour and stardom. I reached the spot. It was a small sit-in bakery with musty brown walls and white windows. It was unusual for a rich man to dine here. People were thronging outside the bakery to view the sudden death. Police were having a tough time trying to control the mob. I honk my Ford car on purpose to gain the attention of the press. In seconds, a group of photographers and cameramen with their journalists were rushing towards my car. I took some time to come out of my car, but when I came out, I was surrounded by the sudden flashes which blind my irises. There is a constant tugging and screaming of journalists at my face. I raise my hand to silence everyone, to bring their attention towards me. I will ensure that the culprit is caught and the innocents are given justice. With the help of the police, we will solve the crime as soon as possible. Till then, please maintain your integrity and work ethics. I make a straight beeline towards the bakery, where I'm coldly welcomed by Inspector Houston. Don't come here, fella, without any prior information. Take your media attention somewhere else. He smirks. It would be better if you pay enough attention to your duty, rather than observing my style and sensibility. He stares at me and spits on the ground. So what are the details of the case, Mr. Houston? According to the witness, Robert entered the bakery with singer Sasha. They ordered a lime tart with lemonade. Then, in the middle of the conversation, an argument burst open. A few seconds later, he asks for water, which was given by Sasha from her bottle. In moments, he clenched his head and passed out. So, where is the singer now? She is in the basement of the bakery, hiding from the press. Bring in all the witnesses, and let's interview each one there itself. We agreed to investigate the scene first. Nothing was weird, nor there was anything suspicious. Then we interrogated each eyewitness. First was the singer Sasha, a beautiful woman in her early 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her cheeks were stained by mascara, and her lips quivered from the constant crying. It was odd that a young girl like her was interested in a man who was in his late 40s. But it is not odd in a patriarchal society. I gave her my handkerchief. A man gotta respect a lady's emotion. So, Miss Sasha, what happened during your brunch at the bakery? Robert called me here to discuss some private matters. He was stressed for the past few weeks. Can you guess what he was about to discuss? I ask. She moves her head from side to side with few sobs. Miss Sasha, when Robert asked for water. Instead, you could have called the waiter. Why did you provide it from your bottle? Robert liked clean filter water. He always used to question the quality of water at restaurants. Hence, I used to carry my own source. Did you hand over the bottle to the police? She nodded. The next person was the waitress, the only witness who was present at the bakery. A young woman in her mid-20s with hazel eyes and raven black hair. She was confident with her body language and was least affected by the sudden death. What's your name? Rebecca Taylor. For how long you are working here? Since the past few weeks. Can you describe what happened this morning? Mr. Robert was coming to our bakery for the last few days, but this time he came with Miss Sasha. He ordered tart and she ordered lemonade. It's wrong to eavesdrop on anybody's conversation, so I was at my counter cleaning the stoves. But in the middle of their conversation, they started arguing. Mr. Robert was demanding Miss Sasha to leave her career. Then he asked for water, to which she gave her own bottle, and in a matter of seconds, he clenched his head and fell on the ground. Where was the owner of the shop? Every morning, the owner goes to buy the supplies for the rest of the day. He went out as usual. The next person was the cleaner boy, who was not the witness. But he was there in the basement of the bakery when the incident took place. What's your name? Vade Danish. So, Vade Miss Rebecca told me that you went to the basement to take a puff of the cigarette. Sometimes you had to twist other people's confession to extract the truth. No, sir. Miss Rebecca had seen a few mice in our basement, so I went there to get rid of them. Okay, so for how long are you working here? 2 years. Everything was done. We talked to the witness. We investigated the scene, but couldn't find a clue. The police, as well as I, was waiting for the medical reports of the corpse, but it had a lot of time to it. Miss Sasha was on house arrest, and other people were under observation. I took a few days to search for the missing links in this case, but could not find one. This morning, I decided to give a visit to the bakery. Through the glass windows, I could see Rebecca taking orders from the customer and Vade helping his owner. I enter inside, and Rebecca gasps her breath seeing me. Did I frighten you, Miss Rebecca? No. I mean, yes. The incident has made us face the worst fears that we never could have expected. What will you like, sir? She asks in a humble tone. Oh, nothing. I just want to sit and relax for a few seconds. Nothing else. She goes away, leaving me in silence. I try to connect the information that I had about this case, but couldn't figure out any missing links. A force knocks at my temples. The migraine bouts were reoccurring every morning. I press my fingers at my head to ease out the pain. I search my pockets for the container of pills, but I couldn't find them. Sir, are you okay? I see Rebecca beside my table. Yeah, everything is fine. Nothing to bother about. She puts a tray in front of me. It has herb tea and strawberry custard. It's for your migraine, sir. It will soothe your nerves. I thank her and dig in my spoon because I have skipped my breakfast this morning. At the last spoon, a thought occurred to me. To clear it, I needed to meet the doctor who was examining the body as well as the reports. I rush out of the bakery without paying the bill and race my car to the hospital. Doctor, did Robert had a migraine? Because according to the witness, he clenched his head before passing out. Did he get a migraine attack while having the arguments with the singer? I don't know, lad. Maybe he had, maybe he hadn't. The technology isn't so developed to bring in the conclusions. What did you find in the reports? The mystery is that we couldn't find anything with his body. The brain and his other organs were intact, but his blood reports are weird. What does the report say? That during their argument, there was the sudden spike of salts in his blood flow. He had large quantities of salts in his body during his death, which we call hypernatremia. In hypernatremia, a person typically feels thirsty. The most serious symptoms of hypernatremia result from brain dysfunction. Severe hypernatremia can lead to confusion, muscle twitching, seizures, coma, and death. So, how did this condition occur in his body? Any clue? We couldn't find that, but the bottle that Miss Sasha gave had typically weird ingredients and salts. I think you should further investigate it. The police were informed about the reports, and we both rushed to the villa of the singer, who is currently under house arrest. Miss Sasha, we found salts and weird ingredients in your bottle, and Mr. Robert died from severe hypernatremia. The Justice of Sword points at you, because before he had passed away, he demanded water from you. I drink salt-infused water to keep my voice intact and to keep throat infections away. She started to sob and pleaded in front of us that she was innocent. She was taken in for police custody, and the court will manage the rest of the hearing. We gave a press conference about the case and addressed questions of the media. After a few days, I visited the bakery again to pay my pending bill and to meet the staff. The staff members were happy to see me and greeted me with warm smiles. I paid my bill and talked to each staff personally. Rebecca was happy and asked me about my migraine conditions. That day, how did you know that I got a mild migraine attack? My mother was suffering from migraine, so I recognized the symptoms really fast. So, you live with your mother? No, sir. My mother passed away a year ago. I live on my own. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Well, take this. I take $50 from my wallet and hand it over to her. Take it as your tip and use it wisely. She takes the money and her warm finger brush with mine. Her cheeks tinge like strawberries, and she gives me a peck on the cheek. I smile at her and walk towards the door. Sir, please do come here again. I turn around and say, I will come if I have time. I know you will. I nod to her and sit into my car and drive to my home with a smile. I was watching a soap opera on television while cooking my dinner. Then I hear a knock on the front door. Who is there? I shout switching off the television. "Sir, it's me, Daniel." I take a sigh of relief and opened the door. Daniel was my counterpart, as well as my personal spy. He used to track the backstory of the cases, as well as the victim. "So, Daniel, what brings you here?" "The back history of Robert Jr. Tell me the juicy details." "He was a drug dealer in South Carolina and was once arrested while delivering a load of cocaine capsules. This businessman earns the white money with the help of the black money," I said. "Listen, he used to execute his plans with the help of a female doctor. But after his arrest, she was absconding and still is on the wanted list. Here, see her photo." I take the file to view, and my head spins. I reach the kitchen counter for support. I could not believe my eyes. It was Rebecca. "What happened?" Daniel asked. "She is the waitress who works at the bakery where Robert had died." For a few seconds, we glared at each other and rushed to our cars. I sped up my car, not worrying about getting a fine. I rush into the bakery and shout, "Where is Rebecca?" Vade rushes towards me with a note in his hand. "Rebecca quit her job this morning and left a note for you." I take the note and read, "Dear Thomas, take a warm coffee with a heavy breakfast to curb your migraine attacks. Before sleeping, drink a nice herbal tea. It will cure the migraine away. And what else will you like, sir? Your friend, Rebecca." Something catches my eye across the street, and I rush towards the window to see clearly. It's Rebecca, with Ren's auburn hairs and a wicked smile. She waves at me, gives a flying kiss, and in the next second disappears.